welcome everyone to our 10th and our series of 12 here this year and our Soil Nutrition Conference, the reNaturing ourselves is our theme. We've got a wonderful panel here today and a very exciting project. We've had I don't know, every week when I listen to the recordings, I'm blown away at the amount of insights that the speakers share and the different perspectives they come from, and it's all very inspiring, but sometimes almost overwhelming, and not always entirely like take homes. I think some of them definitely more than others. But today we've got a presentation on a new project we're about to launch called the Brixit campaign, and it's a citizen science project where we can each actively go out and engage with the process of buying food now and share and learn. So we've got Adam who works for the BFA, and he's going to be presenting on the kit itself. And then we've got Dan Teravis, who works for ourSci, they've been our partners for since the beginning, for 8 years now, on everything BI related to the labs and the meter and everything. And they've been working on the app for the Brixit campaign. And then Sue Kahumbu from Kenya, who's been doing wonderful work with growers across Africa using the refractometer, and they've been building an app as well to look at plant health and helping farmers be able to share and learn. So we've got Rose. Rose is actually the app developer, so we'll see how much she talks versus Dan about the logistics there. But that's the rough agenda for the day. I'll be sort of emceeing, bringing in each of the presenters and then giving them the floor. So, Adam, are you ready to turn your camera on? There you are.
Hey there.
You want to just share with everyone who you are for a minute or two?
Sure. Hi, I'm Adam, and I have been doing creative direction and the art direction for BFA and BI, and sorry, the Institute and for the Food Association. And yeah, that's about. I also do all the web stuff and things like that. So
basically anything you see, like the website or any graphics or all the sort of aesthetics, the slides, all the stuff that you see associated with the organization is your handiwork. So
yes, yeah,
you're the artist.
It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. I have the fun job.
And you got really, really excited about this Brixit campaign.
Oh God, yes.
Do you mind sharing with us just, if only for a couple minutes,
what it is you
when
I love the way you said a couple of minutes, like don't do it too long.
No,
yeah, so basically, when I watched Dan presenting, he showed somebody how to use a Brix meter. And when that happened, I just immediately saw a game and about sharing it with people and things like that. So came up with the name Brixit for the Brixit Challenge. And so this is what we came up with. And so this is the box. When you get the Brixit kit, you open it up. You'll see there's a message from Dan. And then inside, you will see there is a bunch of goodies. So the first one is obviously your Brix meter. And then we have a whole bunch of instructions on how to use it. The thing that's really nice about this is there's also some historical stuff going on here to learn about Brix and reams, people who have been pivotal to using the Brix meter and for taking measurements. When you take in your measurements, we have, this is for fruits, and then this one is for vegetables. And then this is the really neat part. So basically, to get the juice, we have a Brix press. And then very specially, we have a coin that is a exclusive Bionutrient coin that we're really excited about. And then what you do is you put your coin into the press, and then you squeeze to get your juice that you put into your Brix meter. The first thing that you will be doing is going to be evaluating apples and getting your numbers for apples. And then as members, we will be putting out every month, perhaps, a new produce for you to be turning into a contest. And we're looking to find the best one out there. So we will wonder what the next thing will be. And then there's also some test stuff in here too. It's a really exciting package. I'm so proud of this.
These are I mean, if you didn't know, you'd think we're a professional operation based on looking at what you've what you've done there. For anybody who's conversant in this world, right? There's nothing fancy here. Um, it's a basic refractometer. It's a
Yeah,
garlic press,
yeah,
a coin.
yeah.
It's a chart you can download from the internet, but it's like put together in a box it explains it and it looks, coherent um, and the idea here is basically, all this talk about meters and spectrometers and defining nutrient density and everything else is all, some people find it inspiring, other people find it to be a total, obnoxious, obnoxious distraction. But we
But for
have
me, Dan, for
in
me,
our
when
hands
you
right
were
now this
for me,
ability.
when you were presenting it, it's the community. It's the reason why we gamified this is to gather people together to make it into this beautiful community of people discovering food, smelling food, tasting and touching food. It's all about that. The community part is the thing that makes it so exciting. And that I've watched you present it twice so far, and every time it's just like, let's discover this together. And that's really exciting for me. So that's the gamified portion of it.
Well, this is the basic kit, but then the thing is, what are we doing with it? And that's to your point, the gamifying. And this is what the next presentation with Dan and Greg and Rose from our side is about, is the app. And our thought is like, okay, so everybody who wants to be part of this game, part of this community, one of those citizen scientists, activists, um, can engage in this global project with this thing right now. And yeah, what the ourSelves team is about to present is this app, which is still in what they call beta form, which means you can use it, but it's not like totally slick and perfect. Um, and once you take your apple and you squish it and you get your number, then you go onto the app and you put in this is the date I bought it, this is the place I bought it, this is the label or brand it had, and this is the number. And and if you want to, you could invite your friends. So you could say, bring your shopping, your friends bring their shopping, you get together and you taste it and you get the readings and you hang out together. It is a social event. And together you learn about where better stuff is. And it's a great excuse to hang out and spend a good time together. But we the people together from bottom up can begin to actually help each other find where our better quality foods are and start leading by example with this whole concept of testing and shifting our purchases, et cetera. But no, there's something that happens when someone actually has a refractometer in their hand and they squish the tomato or the blueberry or whatever it is, get the drop on the screen, look through, and there's a number there. And then
Yeah,
they
it's
do a
so
different
exciting.
one and it's got a different number. There's something, they say the penny drops, right? Like, I don't know how to say it. It's a visceral experience. Like, oh my God,
Mhm.
I can do this right now. I don't have to just sort of like, it's a tomato. I don't really know. I can sort of like, God, who was I talking to? Someone a couple of days ago. Um, I can't remember who it was. They had a friend who'd heard about this. Oh, maybe it was Patrick. I think it was Patrick last week who was saying one of the guys who's maybe going to work on his farm had heard about this, and they had all gotten a bunch of tomatoes or whatever it was, and tasted them first and ordered them by what they thought was tasted better and worse, and then tested them, and actually the numbers showed up. So yeah, that whole thing about getting your senses reconnected, your intuition, um, yeah, and hanging out and having a good excuse to do things together. So
Yeah, and get also being able to, if you play the game, to be able to do it with children and have children, like learning to touch it and learning to feel it and try and discern whether something is good for them, and then and learning the reading, like not just eating, but actually participating with the food. I think that's really important.
yeah, yeah, and the opportunity for a curriculum and using it to, we've got we've gotten
Yeah.
so many people from around the world that are really excited to take part in this, and that's where we're at. Is like, okay, we've got a basic kit, we've got a few hundred of them made up, and now the app is basically at that point of being able um, to be used by beta testers. This is not like ready for the big bad world, but if we want, if tens, hundreds of BFA members over the next few months want to get a kit and start taking part in that process, then the plan is to roll this out in a massive way going forward. So um, I think that might be a decent segue to the our side team. Do you any other comments you'd like to share, Adam? Thank you very much for
No, I'm
coming
just
on.
so excited to get it in people's hands, and really, and also like feedback. I'd love to get feedback because this is the first iteration,
Yeah.
and there's we want to make sure that this is a fun project, and yeah, I can't wait to see what it does with the app too. That's really exciting. Yeah.
Beautiful. All
All
right.
right.
Well, thank
Thank
you
you.
very much, and thank you for all of your passion and artistry in this.
Of course.
Yeah.
It's so much fun.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Dan, are you gonna take this by yourself and just Greg and Rose will be on for the Q&A section, or
Yep, yeah, that
that's the
is what I
plan?
will do.
All
And
right. You got some slides, I guess.
no, we're going to try to do a live demo,
Okay.
can always be a little bit risky in this environment, but it worked in the practice session. So first, I'm going to apologize because I'm going to give you a little bit of an introduction and background, and Adam and
I'm
Dan.
gonna I'm gonna turn my camera off and let you take the main stage.
Sure.
Okay,
Right.
great.
So
Go.
yeah, Adam and Dan were building up such excitement and energy about this, and it's like, oh, now some other person is going to talk about himself for 2 minutes before we get into that other stuff. But I'll try to get back to that excitement here in a minute. So I'm really excited about the opportunity to be here and for us at our side to continue to work with the BFA. As Dan mentioned, we've been involved with various BFA projects from 2017, I think, when Greg, my business partner who is on, and Dan met at one of his, I think, teaching sessions that was in Ann Arbor. We helped set up the Bionutrient Institute lab in Ann Arbor and develop methodologies that have been shared with like Chico State and labs in France and the UK as part of the nutrient variation project that the BFA had been leading for quite a few years. That's also relevant here because the dashboard, the app that I'm about to show you, is actually going to be populated with a lot of the data that came from that effort. So even though that project is wrapped up and done, there are still a lot of artifacts and tools from that have allowed us to roll into this project. So we, as a company, our goal is to use open source technologies, hardware and software, to support communities of research. So whether that's community-led science or citizen science, like this Brix project, we're just trying to either identify existing open source technologies or develop them to really fit organizational needs. And so, we also helped build the first kind of version, the alpha version of the bionutrient meter, which you may have heard at various times in the past Dan Kittredge talk about. And, we're in the process of writing up actually a peer-reviewed article for around the results of that nutrient variability project that we did. So I'm going to share my screen and get into the app here, and this might take just a second. We'll see. And as Dan mentioned, this is a beta version of the app. It is, I will say, ugly by design. And what I mean by that is we've focused on building the architecture so that people can submit data, they can view data, they can click around and explore data, but we haven't committed to really specific UI like experiences, right? Workflows where you click on this button, which takes you to the next button. Because part of the beta testing that we're hoping to get from anybody here in this community and others is to really for them to design the application. How do people actually use the application? Dan, I think, mentioned like house parties, or maybe it was Adam, right? House parties where you come together and you do stuff and you test the bricks of various readings together. So how does that look on the application? What do you actually need for that experience with the app to be enjoyable? So instead of us guessing what the process should be, we want to hear from beta testers how they want it to be, so we can build to the community's aspirations, to the community's workflows. So I'm going to just provide a couple of minutes of a tour of what exists and how we envision this process working going forward. And then I'll pass it off to Sue, and then I think there'll be plenty of opportunity for more detailed question and answer later on. So there are two key workflows that we're trying to address right now. The first is somebody who wants to use this as a consumer tool to decide where to purchase their produce and what produce to purchase, right? So like, what store has the best quality apples in my area today? What brand has the best quality tomatoes today, so that you can make your purchasing decisions around this? So there's two ways in which we're hoping to kind of build tools that support that, answering those questions. The first is what you see here, which is the leaderboard. So for me, I'm located in Hazlet, Michigan. You can see this little blue message at the top. There is no data from Hazlet, Michigan. So it's showing me by default all of the information in Michigan, so I can see what the best quality is. So these scores are just kind of normalized scores. So if you're familiar with Brix, you know that the ranges of good or bad for an apple and a potato are going to be different. So it's hard to just take a Brix value and do much with it. So we have to like normalize and kind of create scores, so we can say, hey, if there's a pear, an apple, and a potato from this store, and spinach and something else from another store, how can we compare them, right? So that's some of the work that's going on behind the scenes in the application. So I say, oh, okay, Arbor Farms Market has theoretically this top rank, highest quality stuff, highest quality produce. Let me look into it. And now I can see all of the data that's been submitted for produce from this Arbor Farms Market in Ann Arbor. If you look over here, you can see the brand. So here, this one here is a Gala apple. It doesn't have a brand, so it probably came out of a loose bin. This pear is a Bosque pear from Rivermaid. And then you can see the actual Brix values of each individual produce and the assessment date. I'm going to click on this one. I know it's a little bit weird. This is a test example, but now I can see all of the information that was submitted, and people can submit pictures as well. Now this is an avocado and that's an apple, so clearly this isn't a real measurement. This is one of our tests, but there's an opportunity to write notes about what you're looking at, to take pictures and to share those with the community, so that they can use those as references. And that could be used as part of the gamification that Adam was talking about. It could be used as part of consumer decision making as well. So there's top locations. There's also, you can filter by top brands. So, okay, Alderman Farm. Oh, I remember now. I was supposed to click on this one. There we go. So Ambrosia Farms, Ambrosia Gold, sorry. This is a Gala apple with a really good high Brix score. And now we will go back to a data set that actually would really work. I'm going to go to Boulder, Colorado, where Dan and Adam, I believe, spent a good portion of 2 to 3 days just collecting and scanning and doing Brix measurements of a lot of samples. So you can see, if you were to live in Boulder, there are a very rich data set here. Like 23 submissions from Lucky's Market, or from 22 from Trader Joe's. So there's a lot of rich data about what people identified, the brands that were good, what the average values were for the different stores. We'll click on the Whole Foods here, just again to see all of the individual Brix values. And it looks like, yeah, there's 3 pages of Brix values from the Whole Foods in Boulder. So that's the first kind of consumer-friendly tool. The other one is a map. And again, because my personal location is kind of boring, I'm going to go back and use the Boulder example again. This would, if you were in Boulder, it would auto select to your current location, as opposed to me navigating from Michigan to Boulder. And now I can see the stores where data exists, and I can click on those stores, and I can start to, again, explore the data near me. What are the Brix values that people are seeing? So we have like 6 potato submissions. And again, you see the brands and the dates in which they're submitted. You can filter by, just look at all of the raw data, filter by brand. And again, what we're hoping for now that we have this beta version up is for people who are interested in the community to really look at this and say, how would I use this to make purchasing decisions? What are the workflows? Come back and report to us what works, what doesn't, and really, really drive the development of what this final tool will look like. The last piece I wanted to demonstrate real quick is the how to submit a measurement, right? So you've got the box, you opened up the box that Adam showed you, you went through the process with your coin and you've got the numbers. How do you enter it in? You would select submit measurement. You would select your crop type. I'll use apple as an example. You will enter and I'm going to go back a minute. You will enter your brand. So another artifact of that BI lab in Ann Arbor is this huge list of brands, which is really, really well populated for those in the US, but poorly populated if you're coming from Europe or Africa. So you have the ability to create your own by entering the brand and then hitting the button here. You'll see where I previously added Dan's brand. So if there's a brand that's popular in Spain or Kenya or somewhere else, you can add those right in the tool. Same thing with point of purchase. We have a very long list of potential stores, but you can also create your own. I'll just select the Aldi near me for this, and then you can just pull your slider for your Brix value where you want it to be, enter in the sample location. So by me, it's the Aldi on Marsh Road. That's the one I go to. We'll say, this is obviously not a real example, but we'll say today is the date. If I knew the variety, I could enter it here. If I had other notes or if I wanted to add a photo, I could do all of that. And then I could, of course, my Zoom bar here is popping up over the submit measurement. Let me move that. Now I've submitted that data and you can see my submission here with a nice high quality apple from the Aldi near me. Now, because it's not a real measurement, I am going to go ahead and delete that so it doesn't stick around. And again, this is another area where the community and has a citizen science project. Everyone here can support it, not only by testing the workflows, but then also just by populating it with more recent data that really allows people to see what's happening in their area or to compete as part of the gamification that Adam was talking about. And I think I'm going to stop there and we can circle back if there's questions later on. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Dan. Brilliant work you guys have done. I mean, Rose and Greg, you both have been actively involved in this process as well. Would each of you mind maybe just coming on for a couple minutes and sharing your experience and your role and your thoughts about this process? We have 5 minutes before Sue's scheduled to start. So be happy to give you both a chance to speak if you're willing.
Sure. Yeah, I can start.
Turn your camera on too, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so I mean, honestly, Rose has really done most of this work. Dan and I did a lot of the previous work, so we have a lot of the background and experience in working with Dan and the BFA, and then also like running citizen science projects of this type. And you know, trying to prioritize the important items. You know, one thing I would say is we've been fortunate because these kind of development projects, you know, making software is like a surprisingly kind of complicated and expensive thing to do historically. And some of these new technologies in the last couple of years have made this a lot more accessible, which it's not trivial. You know, when you look back at what we did, you know, 5, 6, 7 years ago, and the amount of effort we put into some of the things to try to engage people, you know, poor Dan's out there having to raise hundreds of thousands of dollars to make that work. Honestly, really. And that just that becomes your whole life, and it affects the project and the direction and the capacity and what you can do, and the expectations and delivery. And so I think, you know, one of the huge pieces about this is this was not that hard to do now. And I think that's cool, because if you want to go do it now with something else, like you've done the beef project, I mean, that's more lab oriented, but if you had other components that could really be like this simple and accessible and citizen science oriented, you know, making these kind of accessible tools is much more possible. So that's probably the only point I would add to what Dan has said. I think that's really changed in the last 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, well, it's been a big process of learning, but yeah, it just feels so exciting to be able to have something tangible like this. And I feel like, you know, this has been a fantasy, a vision, a hope, a desire, a dream for many years. And we were prioritizing other things, as you said, Greg, and things we were, you know, other things couldn't happen because of the complexity of stuff. But yeah, no, now that we're, you know, yes, it's wonderful to be here now, and it's a great segue to Sue's, you know, topics of what she's doing in Africa. But please, Rose, you know, yes, you are the one who've done, like, in the same way that Adam built the kit, you built the app. So please, at least say hi, and if anything else you'd like to share, we'd love to hear.
Hey, hello everyone. I'm the developer for this app, and it's been a pleasure working with the BFA. They're very easy to communicate with and get these features out. We really jam-packed a lot of features in there. Not too many, but just enough so that y'all could get a feel for what kinds of things you like. We would love to hear how you're experiencing it, what you really like, what you really don't like, so that we can help make the flow better for you. This is the most exciting part, because we get to hear about, hey, this is what I would really like to see. This is what I'm really excited about. And that's how we're going to keep ramping up and getting everyone involved. So thank you all for being here, and we're looking forward to it.
And that's part of the wonderful thing about ourSci and the way you guys work is this, like, you truly do believe in the citizen science process, and and that is the exciting thing about today. And those who have questions or thoughts, jot them down now, or even type them into the Q&A so we can engage them in half an hour. Yeah, this is, yeah, and there is a bunch in there. Dan sort of walked through it rapidly, but look at all those different things you could check and add, and I'm, yeah, really curious to know what people's thoughts are about. This makes sense. I'm concerned about that. I'd like to see this, etc. So brilliant. Well, this has been a great half hour on the Brixit challenge, and app kit. Sue, you got half an hour to share everything you've been doing in Africa and its overlap with this and the opportunity for collaboration, etc. So you're muted.
Hey,
There we go.
Dan.
Hey,
Did you say I could share everything that I've been doing?
you got half an hour to go for it, as much as you want to share as it pertains to all this, and where you want to go. And I mean, I'm sure you got a presentation plan.
Okay, yeah, I did, and I scooted it around a little bit, but I'm just going to scoot it right back because it's important. What I have to say is quite important.
Yes, really happy to have you on.
Here we go.
And I'm gonna sign off and let you take it.
Okay,
Yeah.
let me share screen.
Yeah.
Here we go. You watch me take half an hour just trying to sort my stuff out. No. Sorry about that. Okay, here we go. And we're off. Can you see?
Yep. Got it.
Okay, perfect.
Great.
So there was a map of Kenya there that's been moved around, but I wanted to just let people know that I'm in Kenya. For those of you that don't know very much about Kenya, you probably know we're really famous for our national parks, for the Masai Mara, Tsavo, Amboseli, Samburu. We're really famous for our wildlife, and also for breeding the world's fastest long-distance runners. We're situated in East Africa. We straddle the equator. We border 5 other countries. This is a picture of my farm. This was in 2000, where I was doing salads, producing salads for the salad pack industry.
Your slides aren't moving forward.
Really? You can't
These-
see the salads?
All I can see is the iCow logo. It's not progressing.
Okay, they're not moving?
No, not for me.
It's still in like the overview mode.
Hang on, I've gone off a second. Let me go back. How did that happen?
My taste says you have to go into presentation mode, which I think was what Rose was saying.
Yeah, I am in presentation mode, and it was telling me that it was sharing. But
It was sharing. It just hadn't. It wasn't. Yeah, hadn't moved forward.
Yeah, but I can't get optimized video, sound, or anything that's coming up on my side here. I don't know why. Hold shift to select multimedia windows, content only background.
Try again.
Normally when I do Zoom, it's as easy as this. Is it?
Okay, you're back. Yep.
Okay, is it sharing? Is it moving?
There you go. Now we just, yep, perfect. Now we can see. Now it's moving. Yep, we're on the 3rd slide now.
Okay, let's go to the second place. So that's my farm.
Perfect. Perfect.
And that's my farm. It was back in 22. I started growing salads in 1998 on a smaller farm, and almost had a tragic experience with pesticides a year later. And that made it really easy for that mental shift to organic production. So it wasn't based on having, any issues or consumer demand or anything. It was basically due to an almost tragedy on the farm. I was doing lettuces, which miraculously was a really easy crop to start with, so I didn't have a lot of problems. And in no time, I had a thriving salad pack business supplying stores, hotels, even the airlines across Nairobi, and those in and out of the country with salads. And my farm was a first organic certified farm in Kenya. I started teaching and writing for a local organic magazine. The organic movement was very nascent at that point in time. Teaching was boots on the ground, which was lots of fun. And naturally, as my business and trainings grew, I was inadvertently growing a supply chain of farmers and great product diversity. I was also growing incredibly impatient with the management of the outlets that I was supplying, to the point that the next logical step was to open up my own store, which I did. So I pulled out of everywhere else, opened up my own store, and much more of teaching and growing and more consumer demand led to venturing into a poultry business. And I started experimenting with different breeds on the farm, looking for hardy breeds that could survive and grow in our cold climate and grow under organic conditions and produce good eggs and meat. And soon afterwards, I was asked to manage a Jersey stud farm across the valley. And of course, I agreed to do so if I could start a range of probiotic dairy products. So we did yogurts and soft cheeses and things. And soon the product range was diverse enough, and the other outlets were respectful enough for us to branch out again as a shop-in-shop concept, ensuring organic was available at scale in supermarkets in Nairobi. I'm reading a few notes here because there's so much in this presentation. It wasn't long before what started out as a private business began to grow into a mission to ensure that producers had access to knowledge and markets. I was growing increasingly curious about developing a scalable system to provide access to knowledge to millions of farmers. We have 4.5 million smallholder farmers in Kenya. And I also began to realize that I was getting really bored with being a shopkeeper. So I changed the course of my life, and I started a tech company to build an offline agricultural extension system. And that was the start of iCow. The first product was an SMS-based wiki that farmers could access following a simple USSD menu and receive content of their choices in SMS. Most didn't have access to agricultural books, holistic extension, nor the internet. Most had low-end phones. iCow has evolved since then to include a series of innovative, intelligent digital tools, as well as a smartphone app and several data platforms. And it's used by thousands of farmers in East Africa. This is a picture of, yeah, it's out of sequence now, but I'll tell you what it is as I'm scooting my slides around. This is a picture of the first soil advocacy group that started, and I'll tell you how that started later on when we catch up with that slide. Many of them are probably in the audience now. Big shout out to you guys. I designed a soil advocacy course after taking the Kiss the Ground soil advocacy course. That was in 2019. And I thought, wow, this information is really cool. Let me start this for Kenya. And we went into 2020, the period of COVID, and my company went virtual. So all my techies were virtual. And I thought, well, can we reach out to another segment of the value chain of agriculture, which is now people somewhere else, but that can access farmers and help farmers and teach farmers, even though we can't. And one of the model that we used here was to reach out to the border riders, the motorbike riders, and developed a program that connected them with the +1 that had to be a woman in their household. And then part of their homework had to be working and teaching the community on the ground the things that they had learned with us. And then we did it was a 3-month course, and within that time they were making compost and other things. And then they sent samples into Nairobi. Half of those samples came to me, and I was then rapidly learning the Elaine Ingham soil food web method of assessing microbes in the soils and compost and things. It was so cool. So I took half of them and I looked at them from a microbial perspective and tried to map down what I was seeing based on my knowledge. I was certified as a lab technician then. And ILRI did chemical analysis on the same. And what was really interesting was that their analysis didn't come out at the time the students got there. They only had 3 samples done. We had done I think it was 60 samples in my little lab. But when they gave us the results later, we had an award system there on the ground where probably the first soil microbial award ceremony on the continent, and individuals won trophies, and even the group who had the most influence in their area won a trophy as well. What was interesting about the data later was that those that won trophies and awards for high microbial presence in their samples, it also showed in the chemical analysis that they were the soils or the compost with the highest nutrients that were recognized, or minerals recognized through the chemical analysis. And conversely, the reverse was the same as well. So those that showed really low microbial density had very low nutrient density. And what struck me then was that when we see low minerals and low nutrients in soils through the chemical pathway, what we normally fix it with is more chemicals. And that bit of data there made me realize, we're not fixing it the right way. We're not fixing it with the microbes. This is a photograph of the trophy that they went home with. And this again, when we talk about citizen science, citizen science, whatever the other word would be, we forget that there's a lot that we can get out of pictorial data, and there's a lot of teaching that we can get. There's a lot of info that we can get back. Their trophy went on a safari in their area, and the trophy went from village to village, from ward to ward, and we were making compost and being shown how to make compost. And it was a really great way to get the learning started. And my students, many of them from that first class, then went on to get scholarships from the Soil Food Web, and went on to pass the foundation course, some of them with distinction. Paul, the first certificate at the top there, I mean, he paced through that course like in 3 weeks. Yeah, I think he was the fastest student they ever had. And the results on the ground were, really tangible. I have had, the soil advocacy program has grown from then to many students, over 1,000 students across the African continent now. But the photographs that are coming back from the students as part of their homework is just phenomenal, and that's what drives us. This is a really great example of one of the individuals. His name was Epras. He's in Burundi. He took the course with us, and then he took all of my content, translated into Kirundi, and started teaching his own soil advocacy course in country. And they're now doing regen coffee that's being exported. And this is just the certificate that his organization now gives to students that pass his course. It's just so really cool. So cool. This is some of the pictures of the composting. You can notice a big difference between that first picture with the Border soil advocates, and that was before I'd learned to compost properly, to now the students learning how to create a really highly microbial soil, the biocomplete compost that Dr. Elaine Ingham teaches. And this is just more of them. And here's a little bit about how even through the classes, there's lots of innovation on how to make the cages or do the windows or do the systems. This was a little bit about iCal. That slide is well out of place now, and this should have been a bit earlier as well, so we'll move through that rapidly. But it was through actually this connection between trying to get content for the smartphone version of iCal and seeing the soil story that got me into this space of soils in a big way. And I wrote to Finian Makepeace of Kiss the Ground, and I said, can I use your video on my smartphone app? And he said, yes, you can. And then I took that course. Then the soil advocacy thing started, and then I started taking Dr. Elaine Ingham's course. It was all happening, you know, in rapid succession. This is just a picture of some of the students, many of whom are here in the crowd. Hi, guys. You're up. And then I also started, I thought, you know, the penny dropped for me. We've spoken about penny dropping earlier today, but the penny dropped for me when I saw the soil biology for the first time through the microscope. And I envisioned then setting up and starting a soil microbial service for farmers across the country. So I held what I called a microscopy immersion course, got my top students in. They came in and learned how to use a microscope. Some of them in the moment in the field use their microscopes for their clients. James in the right-hand corner there has a company now, and a little soil lab. Paul has a company called Soil Revolution. Shakira in the middle there is now in university doing soil-related studies. You know, it's amazing what happens when information gets through and you find the right passionate people. One thing that I'd wanted with the soil microscopy lab was and we produced the back end. I wanted that information to get back to the farmers, not to sit with those people that did the assessment. I wanted it to be a pathway to get the information into the hands of farmers so that they could see photographs and that they knew what to do next. So I built the tech part for the soil assessments and for these soil assessors. And we started another service in iCal called iCal Labs. That was 2023, and it involved taking photographs of what the assessors were seeing, and then a final verification of those photographs. But the really cool bit about it was at the end, when it was verified, when their sample was verified, it pinged messages. So we put in algorithms that actually looked at where these soils fell from a microbial perspective. And it picked up information that pinged into the farmers' hands to tell them about their soils, to tell them how well they were doing and what they needed to do to move their soils forward. So that last message then says, to learn how to make biocomplete active compost or compost extract, send XCOM or XCOMX to 20285. So these are part of the other systems that kick them back into the SMS and USSD-based service or into other content that we've developed going forward. Now, 2024, I sent a message to somebody else. I said, I've taken the Kiss the Ground Soil Advocacy course and the Elaine Ingham Soil Food Web course. I'm currently taking the CTP course. And recently, whilst diving into the final piece of our food puzzle, which is nutrients, I came across your work. And I signed up for your online 6 lessons, which I'm thoroughly enjoying. I bet you all know who I'm talking about, right? I was writing to Dan, and Dan said, I'll be speaking in Africa in July, it looks like. Not that I have plans to be in Kenya, but would love to be in support of the work that you're doing there. And perhaps we could get on a call at some point to see if there are ways we can collaborate. Sounds like you're doing important, good work from a good place. And I dove back in with stuff about the community as well. And I said, we love the idea of attending your conference, but can't afford the costs. I'd like to request if there's any way I could get sponsorship for my 100 iCal Soil Advocates to access your online event. And the rest is history. Dan gave us access and we got a sponsor and you're all here. And then the information that started coming into my little brain was from your first conference. Well, it was the 12th conference, no, 11th conference, whatever, the last conference. These particular graphs just struck me like a sledgehammer. I was like, what the hell? How can there be that much nutrient variation across carrots, across any products for that matter? And when you were saying you would need to eat 40 carrots on the red side there for the same antioxidants as 1 carrot in the dark green side, I was like, what about our food here? We're not testing it. We're not looking at it. And then I learned about Brix. I learned a little bit more and then decided to test stuff in Kenya. So this is the Brix readings of 3 products: Spuma, which is kale, spinach, and Managu, which is an indigenous crop, from 4 different outlets: Carrefour, Karen Provision Stores, Mama Boga, Quick Mart. They're all around my area here. We had the products brought in the same day, same time, and Brixed them. We know that Brix can vary when, based on when a plant might be harvested, the age of the plant, a whole bunch of different things. But what struck me was if I wanted to buy food, the variation was so high. I would love to be able to buy that had the highest Brix at the time, irrespective of all other matters that might be involved. I would want the best. I would want the best that's on the market. And it struck me that we're all buying invisible, in an invisible kind of way. And it also struck me when I started looking further at Brix, I started looking at Thomas Dixter's work and the leaf Brix pest and disease relationship, and mapped that against the food I just Brixed in my area. Suddenly realized that we're eating insect food. The narrative of insects and pests competing with our food is wrong. We're competing with their food when you look at it from this perspective. I mean, hardly anything that was around me was nutrient dense at all. And the scary thing was, if the stuff still looked like it did in the store and it was such low Brix and it didn't have pests on it, the chances are it was full of pesticide. And we now know from the country that there is a massive problem with pesticides in Kenya. But the good news was, one of my students sent me some pigeon peas, and when I Brixed those, they were 25.5. And then I started thinking, whoa, we need to get more information on Brix and find out where these hotspots of really great food are. So I went back to the platform that we'd done for soils and put on a layer of Brix that would start now measuring Brix samples across the country. And again, with the same purpose, that the information that's going to land, that's going to come from the system, goes back to the farmer, so that the farmer can make decisions that will help him improve his Brix and get to understand Brix. So it's a few more SMSs that the farmer would get in this stage, because he probably wouldn't even know what Brix was. So we needed to spend time with those first few messages explaining what Brix is. So up until the first 6 messages explain to the farmer what Brix is, and this is in English and Swahili. And the 7th one starts explaining what their product came Brixed as, and what they needed to do. And by now we also had more content, so we could send them to online videos on how to make biocomplete compost, etc. We've Brixed a few different, so I think it's 100 plus different samples across the country. And we started just looking at the data briefly to see, what does it show? It doesn't show a lot. Basically, it shows that you can have good stuff and bad stuff in the same place. It's not really rocket science. But when we looked at it across products, this is what became quite interesting. It was really cool to see that our indigenous crops, now we've always been told that they're healthier, but when we looked at them in relation to the other stuff that we were growing and eating, they were far more nutrient dense. Between good and excellent, 40, 50, 60, 66, almost 70%. And when you looked at the other crops, the skuma, kale and everything, between good and excellent, it was 33%. So it's almost, double. I know that there are a few more in the sample, but what intrigued me was, going forward, if we collect a lot more Brix data, are we going to start seeing that as well and changing people's consumption behavior? Because we're growing products and things that are not that nutritious for us. And the Terraria and the Managu, and if I go back to the graph where we Brix the Nairobi stuff, you could see that they were above 12. So, you know, it's not rocket science when we know what Brix is. Now, just a little bit about our country and our soil. In 2000, the TV did an expose, Nation TV did an expose that showed that our soils were really, really sick, but also spoke about that the fact that our productivity per hectare for maize and for wheat had not increased from 1980. So for 20 years, we did not have an increased productivity per hectare, okay? 22 years on from that expose, the Henrik Boll Foundation did a pesticide atlas for Kenya, which showed that we are using hundreds of different pesticides in our production systems, and many of them which are banned, over half of them are banned in other places around the world. And they're creating huge stresses on humans, livestock, and crops. They did 3 years later another study on soils in Kenya and found that our soils are, you know, we only have 10 to 12% arable soils. That's soils we can use for food production. And of that 10 to 12%, 63% is acidic. And of the 63%, 32% is severely acidic. So our soils are absolutely failing us. And the solutions, when we look at what we've been putting in the soils and what we've been doing to the soils and the solutions we've been thinking we've been using, this is a report of the products, the top 10 agrochemicals that were used last year. The top 10, there 5 of them are glyphosate. And we can see that there's less use of Roundup, and it could be that people are afraid of using Roundup because of all the stories and all the stuff in the media about Roundup. But then when you have a product called Kausha, which is the same thing, or Weedall, which is the same thing, I almost feel like it is advertising, blind advertising, whatever you call it, bad advertising to people who may not understand that they're actually using a variant of Roundup. It shouldn't surprise us then that 2025, another report came out by the same Nation media. They spoke about the alarming rates of childhood stunting and wasting in areas of agricultural abundance. And they also spoke about women of childbearing age having reproductive disorders, a lot of them with obesity and other hormonal disruptive disorders. A month later, our new CS, that's the cabinet secretary, banned 50 harmful pesticides. And he also put a stop on all the glyphosate coming into the country pending review, and has done the same thing, stopped a whole bunch of other pesticides being used. The worrying thing is we're now seeing that farmers are dying, and farmers are dying from cancer. And, you know, this for me is really alarming, especially when we overlap this with where the country is going by 2050. I mean, some statistics say we're going to be 95 million. Some say 80. I've gone with a lower figure of 80. We need to feed 22.5 million new people, and our soils are not going to grow, and our soils are failing, and they're soaked in pesticides, and people are dying, people are getting sick, and we know the whole story. So I want to come back to citizen science. This is one of my classes that I teach up country. I teach them using Zoom. They are young girls. They do trials in the field. They did a control of growing beans and other things in maize. These are just some of the results. The control beans, the plots are all given, well, they're given the various different treatments based on whether they're regen or conventional, but they've all started at the same time, watered the same way. And you can see that it looks like the conventional beans were, you know, higher yielding, but when we came to sorting them and pulling out the spoiled beans, they actually weren't. When they cooked them, they preferred to eat the regen beans and the conventional ones. They just said that the water went black and they didn't taste very nice. We also looked at the roots of the beans, and you can see that the conventional ones there on the right, they hardly grew. The regen ones in the middle, a lot more productive stuff, are still a lot greener. And the control ones were still better off than the conventional ones. So getting students to do experiments like this, again, helping the penny to drop. We did the same thing. They looked at these, they cooked them, they tasted them. And coming back to Brix, all of them claimed that the regen stuff tasted better. This brings me to where we are going next with the work that I'm doing, and I'm going to try and go through this really quick. And this is iCowX, which is equipping the young extension service providers with a new toolbox, a high precision toolbox that has got a refractometer, that's got a compost thermometer, maybe a penetrometer, and access to all the digital tools and platforms that we've built, the technology to help them put data in and get data to their clients on the ground as quickly as possible, but to get data that we can then look at and then to work with them, to mentor them and train them, and help them become part of a growing community of individuals that drive data, put feedback into the system, that help decision makers make the right decisions, and that help consumers also. So when I look at what you're doing, Dan, with Brix from the consumer end on your side, and we're tackling it from the production side here, our consumer system is not as, I would say, as sophisticated maybe as parts of the States, or not for most Kenyans. And I'm trying to drive nutrient density up from the ground, not by consumers asking, because we're not at that level yet where consumer bodies are making a big impact in terms of food choices. But we can be where soil health is concerned, I believe, because that's the problem that we're dealing with in terms of failed food systems and health on a bigger way. And I think that's it. Am I on time? And I'm going to stop sharing.
You're ahead of time. You've got more time.
I'm ahead of time.
That was completely
I can say more stuff.
What's that?
I can say more stuff.
I'm happy to turn my camera back off, and you have another 5 minutes if you want or more. This is, I mean,
No, I'm good.
I should have given you a full hour.
I got to the end of everything that I wanted to say, but what I really wanted to emphasize here was that in the bigger picture of things, we're coming at Brix from two different ways. We know that you can use Brix as a management tool for production, and you can use Brix as a tool around nutrient density, but
yeah,
it takes away the need for me to start thinking about those soil labs with microscopes, which are highly expensive and high precision and delicate, when you can just use a refractometer, which will tell you if your soils are functioning properly or not, which tell you whether the biology in there is working or not, right?
Well, that's the opportunity that we've been discussing for, gosh, it's been almost 2 years since we've been talking about this, but the opportunity to collaborate and to be having this open, science, citizen science, open source education training opportunity for people globally, right? It's not just I live in the US, you live in Kenya, you're working across Africa, I'm working around the world. Like the opportunity here with the open science framing, which is foundational to what Greg and Dan have been doing for their, since the inception of their company. I feel like, Greg, maybe you haven't spoken so much. I'm hoping this is tickling you, hearing everything that Sue's doing. And you want to tell us just a little bit about what Gosh is and Goat and all that as part of this global ecosystem and framework and sort of possibilities and vision? And
Sure.
you can turn your camera on. I know it's a big lift.
Yeah. No, sorry. My, I don't know. For whatever reason, my camera doesn't work on my phone with Zoom, so I apologize. Yeah, I think the interesting thing about citizen science is that, there's the people who are interested in engaging and learning, on the ground, who are having a lot of, just like has been said here, a lot of very personal experiences that don't feel like data, but are, right, and are informative. And then there's the people who can come in and support those experiences and turn that into something that can be communicated to a broader audience. We can communicate personal experiences as stories, but we can communicate the sort of, when they're converted into data, we can communicate that as science. And that has just different channels, right? You can access different kinds of outcomes and different kind of channels we can communicate in that form. And so it really requires forming two communities. There's a community of people on the ground having those experiences, but then it's really important for there to be communities of the sort of the practitioners of the data and all that kind of stuff too. And just like you guys here, they need to have community too, people sit in the corner of their houses and they do their thing and they don't think necessarily very much about the outcomes of that work. And that's how you end up with a whole lot of people contributing to a whole lot of useless, stupid things, because they're not thinking about the outcomes of what they're doing in terms of its impact on others as sort of technology providers or as data analysts or whatever that is. And so, so back in like 2016, we started to work on those communities, those technical communities, along with the folks, you know, the farmers and the folks working on the ground in the fields. And the first one that we, with support from Dan and support from others in 2016, was the Gathering for Open Science Hardware, or that wasn't with Dan, but that was with other groups. And that's basically people who make open source scientific hardware. So things that would be in labs, but also things that you would use in fields. We had a photosynthesis sensor. Other people had, you know, machines for parsing DNA. Other people had pipetting robots. I mean, all kinds of things. And we got together and built a community practice around that. And that was really critical because it allowed us to, just like you're doing here, to not just talk about the technical pieces, right? As a farmer, you're going to talk about the technical pieces of farming, and that's great, but also talk about the value pieces. And as technology developers, you know, there are both technical and value pieces, and we don't talk about those value pieces enough. So that ended up becoming kind of a broader global movement, and we've had quite a few global conferences.
Ended up becoming kind of a broader global movement. He says it's a throwaway line, but keep going. Yeah. So,
well, and it's in the context of sort of a broad, like, free culture movement. If you've heard of open source, if you've heard of open access, there's a whole bunch of movements around ensuring things are in the public domain and trying to ensure that technology development is happening in an ethical and thoughtful way. And some of you on the call may think that's an oxymoron, and I would entirely disagree with you. I think there are some technology that's just not that good, but there is some that I think is useful. And so trying to parse those things out. So we kind of, after, you know, we helped co-found the Gathering for Open Science Hardware, we did that in the open ag tech space in 2018, and Dan supported that, and we connected with, gosh, what's it called? We went to Omega, the Omega Institute.
Gathering for Open Ag, yeah, Open Ag Tech, yeah, exactly.
Yep. In 2018, and then again in 2020, and then we went out to California for the next one after that. But that one's been in the ag tech space, and same idea. You know, how do we bring like thoughtful, ethical discussions to how we have impact in the world and what we choose to focus on as technology developers. So yeah, you know, really, like, all these things come back to, in my opinion, personal relationships in communities, so that we're not all isolated and just parsed by our ability to produce technical outputs, you know, with like bushels of wheat or, you know, numbers of programs, but also to do so like ethically and thoughtfully and connect with each other and care about, you know, the impacts that we're having. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think, I mean, for me, you know, obviously we've worked together for years, and you've been critical in supporting what we've been trying to accomplish in that open, you know, open space. But yeah, I see it just an amazing opportunity to integrate with everything Sue's doing and her work, you know, and with farmers, you know, on scale. It feels like it's deeply aligned. So if maybe nothing else, you know, I can facilitate you guys talking to each other afterwards and we're seeing what kind of collaboration potentials are there. It's yeah, it feels like you're very, very parallel and haven't intersected yet, and maybe through the development of this app that can transpire. I think one of the opportunities now here in the last hour, usually it's me asking the presenter questions, but Dan and Rose and Adam, would you guys all mind turning your cameras and audio back on? I'd love to see if either of you has questions for each other. I don't have any particular preference, but yeah, facilitating the cross-pollination there.
I actually do have a question, Dan, and it's actually based off in the past when you were doing a Brix reading with people and you were holding something, something that you liked the way it felt, you liked the way it tasted, the way it looked, but it had a low Brix reading when it was tested. Do you do when you're enjoying it, but then you get the low reading? Do you believe the low reading, or do you trust your gut? Like, how does that work is the machine always right?
I guess it would have to depend on the context of what you were watching and when it was and who I was speaking to. I would say there's stuff that's obviously like atrocious. There's stuff which is like, oh, that's not too bad. And there's stuff that's like, wow, that was amazing. And so, well, that's amazing is rarely occurs. So I'm guessing it was a circumstance where I'm like, yeah, this isn't too bad. But it wasn't like this is horrible. But yeah, I think the whole point of science is to interrogate these questions and have more people coming together and experiencing and experimenting and this frame of capturing. And I loved everything Sue was showing with the the control and the regen and the conventional, walking that through, having the taste, looking at the Brix readings, looking at the pest pressure. The more we come to this together, the more we'll have a collective answer. So
Right.
I can propose my hypothesis, but the whole point of citizen science is that we, the people, are doing the science together, and in so doing, we learn and we share and we educate, and so yeah.
Yeah, I always found that curious. I know
Yeah.
also that if you're I think one of the other speakers at one point was saying is if you're in the right mindset, you're able to absorb nutrient dense food. And if you are, he said you could have the most nutrient dense food on the planet, but if you're not, something about you is not able to absorb it or something. Did I hear that correctly? And so I don't know, I just find all this, the whole
There's that
topic
whole conversation
fascinating.
about, are you angry? Are you alone? How was it cooked?
Yeah.
All that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And those are much more, subtle. I don't know. I haven't seen the studies. I wouldn't be surprised. But yeah, we've been trying to say it's a much deeper conversation than just
Yeah.
minerals. Sue? Yeah.
Yeah, I want to say it's so from our perspective, when we think that for 45 years we've been following agricultural systems that have led us to where we are now, and we can use Brix to say, hey, we need to start reversing this because our food is garbage. And the reason we're using so many pesticides is because of that, is because we've been degrading our soils, is because we've been degrading the nutrient density in our food. So it shouldn't surprise us then, A, that it's affecting humans. But when you think of that over an entire country, because those systems are our systems, our ag systems, our extension system is government. Most of it's national extension. There's very little private extension. And most private extension anyway is no different. It's all based on conventional agricultural systems, or the majority of it is. So for me, it's about getting that big data out as quickly as possible to allow that data to speak to the systemic system that's in place and start, producing undeniable evidence for need for change to happen at the top, if possible. It's a big wish, but I think it's possible.
Are you willing to speak publicly about the conversations you've been having on that topic and curriculum?
Yeah, sure.
This is absolutely amazing, Sue.
Yeah. So just recently, I never really engaged with our agricultural departments with government. The first time that I went to them with ICAO, and I said, look, this is what we can do. And at that point in time, the tools were minimal. We were looking at just something like the cow calendar, where you registered your animal and then you got feedback directly into the farmer's hands about what was happening with that cow real time along its gestation period, feeding, everything. And farmer could look after the animal, feed it better, make sure that the young one was born healthy, the housing was intact, hygiene was in place, feed quality was in place, etc. And when I brought that to the government in the beginning, many of the extensionists were called into that meeting, and the first thing they said to me is, "You're going to put us out of work." And I was like, "No, it's going to make work easier. I mean, come on, we can do other things now that that's being taken care of, right?" But it made me a little bit apprehensive that they didn't look at it and say, "That's great, let's get on with it." It made me suddenly realize that I was going to be up against people that were not interested in technology making things easier and smoother and faster. So I stayed away. And at one point as well, I also had people come to me and say, "You can't do anything in the space of dairy without going through the dairy board. So what are you doing? Everything that you do, you must go through our dairy board." And I said, "I'm just educating farmers, and some of them have got cows. That's it. I don't need to go through any dairy board. Farmers choose to come to us to learn or not." And I never really went back to try and, even though we were awarded the 2030 Vision 2030 award for agriculture, even when I asked the individual who's at the helm of the body that awarded us what that meant, he said, "I don't know." It was kind of like just a PR thing. They needed someone from agriculture. Oh, there was an app, great, give them the award. Until recently, when our CS, Honorable Matahi Kagwe, banned pesticides, I told my team, "I'm going to the government now." And they said, "But you've stayed away for 15 years. Why now?" And I said, "Because there's somebody in power who knows what's going on." And he was a former Minister for Health. So he could very easily make those connections between health and the ministry. And what was even much cuter for me was that my father built the Ministry of Health and he built the Ministry of Agriculture, and they both sit looking at over Nairobi, these two big buildings, and he had worked in both of them. And I met him in a building my father had built. It just felt like this was meant to be, you know, that kind of feeling. I mean, you know, anyway. So yeah, and I said to him, I remember walking down these corridors with a little hard hat on after school when my dad was coming in, and, you know, they were doing the work on the construction. So we had a great entry point to talk about, but he got it. He got the health part of it. He got the failed systems that were resulting in health like this. And when I was speaking to him about nutrient density, he said, "This is music to my ears." He said, "We need to stop measuring things just by yield. We need to start looking at measuring things by quality." And when I told him, he said, "What are the next steps?" And I was just like completely taken aback. I was like, I hadn't really thought about those. I didn't think anyone would ask. And then I said, "Well, Dan Kittredge from Bionutrient Association is coming to Kenya." And he says, "When?" So I said, "He's coming on the 21st. And he said, "We will arrange a meeting with the ministry. I need him to come to speak to, and you to come to speak to everybody in our extension services. We need to change extension. We need to change our agricultural education systems from universities and from all of our systems." And then, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to meet this time because they've got a mission that's 4 hours out of town that's happening at the time Dan will be here. But the door is open and he's interested and we're speaking the same language. So it's just a matter of now building. Again, Greg, you mentioned relationships. It's all about relationships. This entire space and everything that we do is about relationships and building those relationships. So it's good news. For me, it's good news. I'm going to hang in there like a hyena on the ankles of government until our systems change. I think our systems must change. We don't have more soil. We've got growing populations, and we've got to do the best with what we've got. And the best with what we've got is bringing back life and measuring nutrients.
Yeah, I think what you're bringing up is like, this isn't a one-year project, you know. I think especially what we did early on with the BFA, not that we were treating it, we knew it wasn't a one-year project, you know, but we treated it like if we can get this done, then there's going to be sort of a sea change all in one go. And I think to your point, that's not how it works. What I've realized now is how it works is first, like you have to continue to exist to make change, right? So don't jeopardize your existence. And you have to have the connections so that when those key opportunities come up, like you said, the opportunity to talk to a minister, the opportunity to connect with, you know, a potential champion inside an organization that has significant influence, all that kind of stuff. You have to be there. You have to be ready. You have to have your slides ready, your background ready. You have to be prepared to make the most of that moment, because those moments, that's what gets you there one piece at a time. And so definitely appreciate the BFA for existing, continuing to exist, continue to hold the message, you know, and sort of like being almost like that lightning rod for when lightning does strike. Yeah, super appreciate that.
Well, this feels like one of those lightning striking things is like, you know, I think what the quote I think you called me up right after that meeting, Sue. And what I recollect, I was in some airport, I can't remember which country, but I think it was in Europe. You said, you know, he said, I want you to write a new curriculum for the agriculture for the country. And I'm like, that sounds like fun. That's a good project. But I think everything you're doing here with the tech, right, with this app function of facilitating learning and training to farmers in a citizen science way to facilitate their sharing and learning from each other, you know, is the answer, right? It's not the randomized replicated trials. Just like, you know, last week Patrick said that, you know, now that we have metadata, the randomized replicated trial model of science is you know, it's passé. And this opportunity to really bring these pieces together and facilitate so much learning is just yeah, really exciting. And I don't know if I said brilliant to everything you've been doing. That was wonderful. I had never heard your backstory, at least to this aspect of it, and it was completely impressive. So thank you for sharing. That was just really
Thank you.
wonderful. Really, really impressive. Yeah.
Thank you for coming in as that piece now that takes us forward with more data, with you know, more science, more credibility in what we're doing, proof of concept around what we're doing, etc. I mean, it's so important.
I think it's the collaboration that gives us each more credibility by actually working together and doing real things. Um, Dan, did I see you at one point looking like you wanted to say something? Looked like you had a question or a comment a couple minutes ago.
I don't think I had a particular one. No. If you give me a couple more minutes, I could think of one. But
Okay.
I just appreciate being a part of this conversation and a part of this group. And yeah, and I know the comment that you just made about replicated trials is always interesting. The one thing I'll say is, has someone with more traditional scientific
As a
training.
PhD trained agronomist, yes.
Yeah, is they have value in understanding the potential of things to say, okay, if you do
Yep.
something, this is what might happen. They are
Right.
terrible at telling you what will happen in the real world with a farmer or producers who have stuff to do, who can't follow the perfect protocols, who can't do all this stuff. And that's where, you know, I mentioned the manuscript we're working through right now with that work that the nutrient variability
Yeah.
project, all that data, it helps us see what like actual observations in the world are in a way that we can communicate it to traditionally skeptical scientists like myself so that they don't dismiss the things that Sue is talking about and the other learnings from these types of communities.
That, I mean, is a point, actually, a question I can ask you. I mean, this is something as I go around the world and talk about this connection between soil life and nutrient levels, and people are like, where's the data? I'm like, now I can say we're working on the paper and it's not a simple graph, it's a heat map. But do you mind just spending 2 minutes on that and you know, roughly what the paper is coming together looking like it's saying? Much?
Yeah, yeah, I can spend a couple minutes on that. So, yeah, so real quickly, we took close to 600 samples that were submitted to the lab that were all crop sample plus associated soil samples from within like 30 centimeters of where that crop was grown, plus management information, right? Was it tilled? Was it not? Were there cover crops grown? Was it certified organic? And that type of basic information. And then in the lab, we looked at mineral content, so mostly macronutrients, potassium, phosphorus, calcium, magnesium, sulfur, antioxidants, total polyphenols. And then in the soil, we measured soil organic carbon and soil respiration. And so like the microscopic test that Sue was talking about, that's really hard to scale. So kind of the best scalable soil biology test that we felt would work is this. You take a soil, you dry it, you re-wet it, you incubate it for 24 to 48 hours, depending on the method you use, and you get this like flush of CO2 that is evolved from when you re-wet it. The microorganisms in the soil, they wake back up, they get that engine started, and by measuring that, you have this kind of nice repeatable test. So that was the indication of soil biology that we used. And so what we found across all the minerals was that increase in soil biological activity correlated to increased mineral content in the crops. So every one of the 5 minerals that we measured, right? So pretty consistent. If you have that microbial activity, it's breaking down organic materials, it's mineralizing it, it's making it available. Things like mycorrhizal fungal relationships with crops can directly improve uptake of things like phosphorus. So we're really seeing that, like, yeah, there's a direct increase in nutrient uptake. What we didn't see was necessarily a correlation between antioxidants, polyphenols, and soil biological activity. And when we look deeper there, I think there are some other mechanisms that need to be considered. For example, the certified organic all had higher antioxidant content. And that's consistent with a lot of research that's compared conventional organic systems. But the small market farmers who were organic but not certified didn't see that increase. So, like, what is the difference that's causing that? A lot of the regenerative practices, so those would be like, cover cropping or certified organic or stacking kind of multiple, didn't necessarily increase polyphenols the same way they did minerals. And I think the thing that always, like, for me personally, I kind of get worried is people try to draw a very nice equation. It's soil health equals like nutrient. And it's just simple. If soil health goes up, that goes up. There are different mechanisms in the plants that are occurring, right? That synthesis of antioxidants is a response to the environment and not necessarily just soil health. So we need to break up the mechanisms a little bit and understand, like, yeah, soil health drives a lot of things. All those minerals are the building blocks of vitamins and everything else that we're going to consume with those crops, but it's not the only factor to consider.
It is a good proper scientist. Oh, here's the finding. Oh, but. We need further research.
Well, the data is so important when we're trying to enact policy changes. It's both the subjective, the objective, the numbers, how tasty it is. All of it together will help us to both convince and to change, to make things better for everyone's families.
And to learn.
And
I mean,
to
the whole point
learn.
is we don't know what good and bad are. We just tested a few different things and see what we could find. I think the thing you didn't say, Dan, if I couldn't say it, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is the connections between increased levels of nutrients in soil type or genetics or point of purchase or anything like that did not correlate. Right? The only thing that we did see that correlated, not with everything, but with some things at least, was the soil health. And that's how I've been framing it when I talk about it.
Yep, that's true. And we had done other, like, smaller studies where we had tested food from Walmart, food from Whole Foods. And most people in the US audience on this call would be like, well, I know which one's better. That's not what we found, right? It wasn't obvious that the stuff from Walmart was significantly lower quality. And Adam, I would consider this for some of your challenges around the Brix kit is, right? Some of those, one monthly should be go to the place that you always buy produce and go to the place that you would never buy produce. Okay, and compare them. And what do you actually see? Because the answers might surprise you.
Yeah. Or get one friend each to go to a different store and bring your shopping together and do it at once. Yeah, go Sue.
So what was really interesting is in our data there, if you notice that the supermarkets, so two were major supermarkets, one probably more, one definitely more expensive than the other. So one was like a mid-range supermarket, the other one was the highest range supermarket. And then there was a Karen Provision Stores, which I would put in there as a long-term small shop, but that had a long history in the country, much more than the supermarkets. So really knew what they were doing in terms of satisfying their customers in order to compete with the supermarkets. And then Mama Mboga, she's the lady who sits in the little hut on the side of the road and sells stuff. Hers had the highest Brix. And I think, and it hasn't been proven, but I think it's because of the feedback loop between her and her customers. It's very, very short. Somebody comes in and says, I didn't like this, or I did like this. Whether she's growing it herself or getting it from a supplier, she can make a very quick turnaround and saying, I'm not going to buy it again, or I want more of the same of whatever it is you're bringing me. Whereas how many of us go to a supermarket and say to the management, I don't like that spinach. Can you bring us better spinach? And what are they going to do when you're one of 2 million customers that are walking through their door every month? So I think that short chain, that really short chain between the mama burger and her customers gives rise to better quality produce. Yet we're all being told in the media, don't go near that stuff. All she's selling is stuff that is grown on the roadside and grown with sewage water. Because who was pushing that narrative? Probably the supermarkets, right? And everybody
If we could help people in Kenya learn that what is sold by the, and we don't have this in the quote unquote developed West, where explain what mama mboga is for those who are not from Africa.
So mama mboga, like I say, she's a lady or a guy who will be sitting down. They don't have a formal, it is kind of like formal. We call it the Juakali sector. What Juakali means hot sun. So it's not really it's not a big shop or a big store or anything like that. It's one individual who brings in some produce, vegetables and fruits, and maybe a few other things that her, quick consumables that her customers want. And basically is in the same place all the time, comes in probably every day.
Has things set up on the side of the road?
Yeah, sometimes it's a little wooden structure, sometimes it's just an open wooden shelving, and sometimes it can be even a complete little enclosed shop-like thing that will lock up. But it's more or less, the turnover of produce is very quick. There's no refrigeration, there's no electricity, there's nothing sitting in there long term. What comes in that day is literally sold that day. And she might sell a few other things like candy and batteries or anything else that people might want when they come by. Yeah, and she may be growing a proportion of what she sells, or she may be buying it from people fairly close by in the community who want her to sell, their produce as well. Yeah, she's not a big mainstream in the big value chain of going out to the big markets, and she doesn't have guys with 20 hectares of spinach growing stuff because she can't sell that much. She maybe does sell a lot, but you know what I mean? It's very informal compared to supermarkets.
I don't think people who haven't been outside of the West don't actually know what you're talking about. It's like,
okay.
They've never seen it in their entire lives. So it's actually interesting. Yeah, that aspect, most of us only ever had grocery stores.
And I think that the other thing, just as I was mentioning, that the other likelihood of her stuff being a better quality is because it's fresher, because she doesn't have refrigeration. So the movement of her stuff is much faster as well.
It was picked that day. It was grown locally. This is one of the things we predict is going to be shown. And I think of all the things that were, a label or a thing that you could say that connected to anything, local was the one that connected the best of all the things: certified organic, not certified, tillage, no-till, cover crops, regen, grocery store. The thing that had the best tail and the best part was local. But that would be amazing if we could use citizen science to show that the local shopkeeper, as part of the traditional culture, has the better quality food, and drive attention to them, and then incentivize small farmers to be, driving more business through them. This is all part of the systemic cultural healing that we're talking about in the conference.
And while we're at it, I hope that I have not left anything out as I've been trying to describe to you guys who mama mboga is. And I would ask the soil advocates and Kenyans who are in the group and others who know who mama mboga is, just write about it in the chat so we get build on what I've been saying to help me along, okay?
Beautiful.
Well, this will be interesting too, because the data that's in the app right now is the data that we collected as through the lab, basically. And that's actually going to be really different than what people are collecting in the field, potentially, because all of that produce was to us, like it had to get shipped through the mail. So,
but in this case, it would be what people's fresh shopping is. It's just whether
so that's going to be, so that'll be interesting. That's my point, is that's going to be a little bit different than what's in the app historically. So that might be one of those things that we should really ask and focus on, is something that is like local or very short supply chain versus something from there. I also just like the idea of like short supply chain is something that comes up a lot in the space that we're in, people focusing on short supply chains like Open Food Network does and other folks. And I like this idea of sort of a corresponding like short feedback chain, right? I mean, to your point, there's a short feedback chain between this person and you, and that creates for a better natural evolutionary structure in the market, right? So yeah, in the same way that, you know, digging fossil fuel out of the ground is not a short feedback chain, right? Short feedback chains generally are better. So it's an interesting idea.
Yeah. You know what else I think is really, really interesting is what differences we're going to see. I mean, when I look at our pigeon peas, Brixing at 25.5, I'm like, I didn't know what to correlate them to because I couldn't find Brix for pigeon peas anywhere. And when I just looked at other peas, excellent was like 11. And I'm thinking, okay, that 11, for real, 11? My peas on my farm, Brix higher than 11, according to the British system. Peas 11. So I'm wondering, I mean, we're on the equator. We've got more sunshine. We've got longer days with more sunshine all the time. And is this going to ultimately, this is a big one, we're exporting a lot of tea and coffee, right? Are we going to find that some of the exports that we're selling, where we're measuring kilos and we're selling in kilos and we're measuring yield, what if, and will this have an impact on, because we're selling nutrients, we should, if we start measuring nutrients, are we going to find this changes the ball game for places that have got longer days with more sun and the same production systems without all of the toxins in them, with healthier soils? That for me is really, really cool, because then the government will say, well, let's do it yesterday. If we're going to get better prices because we're measuring nutrients, let's fix the soils yesterday, right?
This is the opportunity, the multiple aspects of opportunity that this whole conversation provides.
Wouldn't it be better if we start broadening out? So instead of just doing peas, but do snow peas and snap peas, and we start measuring each one of them individually and start, instead of collectively, and then create these new numbers, because Reams has got whatever he's got, like 50 or 100 or whatever it is, but why not have it as, I mean, how many different varieties of apple are there, for goodness sake? It's a lot. So wouldn't it be good to just broaden it?
This is the opportunity of what we're doing, is to have tens of thousands of samples and actually begin to update it and tease out, the navy beans from the kidney beans from the
absolutely.
Well, and the key, I would say the key, Adam, is it's a different set of people who are going to be contributing data where there is no data today, because they're not going to get a feedback that's as useful, right? If I'm the first one to put in pigeon peas, I'm getting a feedback of a Brix number, but I don't have a fantastic sense of what that means in comparison to someone else. And also, I can't show up and ask the question, right, of the user that we've talked about a lot, which is, where can I buy the best pigeon peas near me? Because that doesn't exist yet. I think later on, when you have it built up, then those users will show up and also contribute because they're motivated. So I think you got to find your beta test groups, those really motivated folks, right, on those new crops that are new. And then as it builds, you'll get, folks who are showing up to get an answer.
But one of the beautiful things about that with the BFA is we can actually go and amplify. We could get literally hundreds or thousands of people to all go after one thing in one go. And I was asking ChatGPT about Reams actually, and about how many tests he did per crop. And it was typically it was in the hundreds, but just literally with the Brixit kit, if we're going to send it out with the numbers that we're anticipating, we could hit those 100 reviews very, very quickly. And so we could be creating new demographics.
Yep. Well, I use this opportunity. Sorry, quickly.
Yeah, and then just looking at some of those things that you wouldn't be able to even put on there because they don't exist in your countries. For example, managu and spider plant and terere. But we could be doing the same thing here with our ICOW X's on the ground, or others who are doing the same thing. Yeah.
Well, it's a perfect segue. We like to spend the last half hour with the Q&A from the audience. I've got a few questions here. Maite says, could it be possible now that you, Dan, come to Kenya, that you bring a big box of Brix kits so we could also enjoy them?
That's
Enjoy
great. I
them.
love
I
that.
love it. But yes, do it. Suitcase
I'm
full
on,
of
I'm
bricks.
on
Get
a
the-
I'm on a 4-continent, I'm not sure how many, 8 or 10 country tour with one carry-on bag. And yeah, I get hit all kinds of climates. So I gotta have cold clothes, warm clothes, everything else. Um, so this is
We
the
are all
question.
fighting. We're all fighting to get things into Dan's suitcase. I'm like, get
You've got to
cameras and
travel like
mics.
Mr. Bean.
What's that?
Just travel like Mr. Bean. Just say wherever you're going to, you need to have a pair of pants this size and a shirt this size and whatever it
Okay.
is. And then just bring the kits out and we'll make sure you get clothed, right? That will be the trade-off.
I don't mind picking up a new wardrobe. That'd be great. We could talk about that. We could talk about that if you could, yeah.
I second that.
But seriously, right? This is a serious question, and there's lots of people on this planet, and our idea is that this thing gets into the hands of many people. So where we stand right now is we've got 500, the parts for 500 kits, not all put together, but we're basically got all the final pieces. We hope to have them put together, I would say, within the next 2 to 4 weeks. I would say we hope to have this dev version. What's it called? What's the word you guys use? Software people? Beta version available for people. We haven't set the price about how much it's going to cost. It's probably in the $50 price point is my guess. I mean, maybe it'll be more than that. But our hope is to have thousands and thousands of these kits around the planet. And you, Sue, you and I have talked about this, and you had some connections from China, et cetera. But ideally, we'd have a few thousand of these kits in
Yeah.
each continent on the planet and a structure for disseminating them so that we can actually accomplish this grand vision of facilitating this collective process.
I would also add to that, Dan, that don't let the kit be the thing that stops people. I have a garlic press in my kitchen. I have a refractometer behind me. Just tell me, what is it I'm supposed to be brixing next month? So if online, I can become part of the process, exactly. I can become part of the process and I've got my kit around me, or I've got a kit that's rotating through me, or I know somebody I can borrow it from, rather than wait to actually purchase a kit there. You probably find that both ways, you'll get people that want a kit, people that already have stuff that can feed the information in.
Yeah, and it's nice. I'm sorry, Adam.
Now, once again, like you were saying, a bunch of things that I've never even heard of. One of them was spider something or other. Like, again, it's about community. Like, we don't know about it, but I want to know about it. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, tell me about these wonderful vegetables and fruits that are in these other countries. And, the education is, letting our minds percolate and discover stuff. That's what's really exciting to me, just as much as playing the game.
Yeah. I see Ben just made a comment in the chat. He says, put an online portal for folks that don't end up with the beta testing kit. Many of us have the same things that Sue have, as in refractometers and garlic presses. Right. And this is one of the...
To play the game, you'd only need to be the member. We're not sending out individual cards every month. So you'll be able to participate.
You need to be a member. This is a part of how we're doing it. Is part of your credential to be part of the process is you are a member of the BFA. And that's requires some sort of like cash or something. As we've done with the conference, it doesn't have to cost the same amount everywhere. But the idea is that this is a membership based. It's not like anybody on the planet can just throw a ton of data in and we don't know who they are and we can't verify who they are. There has to be some baseline of like who can input data. Everybody should have access to it once it's in there, but who actually is able to put it in. Right now, it's, as Adam said, the proposal is it's a membership benefit of the BFA. So, but we can talk about that. I would love to figure out a way to build the membership of the organization. And this feels like a wonderful way to do it.
So Dan, if they can't afford the kit, but they can afford to be a member, can they still play if they have their own refractometer and
Yeah.
press? Yeah, that's I thought.
Exactly. If the cost of membership in the developing world is different than the cost of membership in the developed world, however you want to frame that difference.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
And the thing is this, a kit might cost $50 in the US. By the time you get it here, it's going to be $150. So it's just going to always become more expensive where there's less money because of
Not if we
distance and
get Dan to
travel
bring
and
it.
importation and getting Dan a big suitcase and all that shit, right? It's just going to become more expensive.
So we talked about this a few conversations ago, and you were in some meeting at some conference, and you met some people from China, and we were talking about the logistics of getting somebody who's got connections to sponsor the purchase of 1,000 kits or 10,000.
There is that option, yes. Yeah.
And I mean, then we could facilitate it. And if the membership is nominal, and the kits could be mass produced, and they could have all the directions and in, the QR codes and all the rest of the process that actually onboards people more holistically. I think these are the things we're working on, but I don't, I will definitely bring a couple of kits, but I'm not going to promise to provide them to people. It's just more for showing purposes. So,
well, if you need to take it onwards, just bring the empty box. You can flatten it and put it in that backpack. I'll give you a garlic press and a refractometer. No, just kidding.
Yeah, I'm sure we can. I'm sure we can figure it out. I love the engagement. I'm going to move forward. Katrina asks, Sue, have you ever worked with or had contact with URDT in Uganda, a girl-led school and university educating girls and young women to be their change in the village? Your knowledge would be great to share with them, as egg culture is a huge part of their lives. Katrina.
No, Katrina, I haven't actually heard about them, so please connect me.
I absolutely will connect you.
Yeah, perfect.
I will absolutely connect you. Yeah. She also says, you look so young. How on earth have you achieved all this? Also, do you use the presence of some plants as a signal for your soil health?
Just go back to the bit about soil health. I was like...
Was she talking to me or Dan?
No, she was not talking to you or to Dan. Don't think. You look so young. How on earth have you achieved all of this? You can leave that one be if you want. Also, do you use the presence of some plants as a signal for your soil health?
I'm always reading plants. I'm always reading what my soil is doing. I'm always reading what my plants are doing. Right now, I've got an amazing plant, the lemongrass plant that is growing, and it's seeded. I've never seen it before. It's seeded, but she's hanging on to all of her seeds, all of her seedlings, and they're growing off her now like some ferns do. And I've been talking to a botanist about it, and he was saying, actually, it's fairly incredible. He hasn't seen it on this particular plant either. I'm amazed at so many things. So I don't plant things in my little garden. I don't plant things for the purpose of them being companion plants or anything. I plant wildly. Everything is growing everywhere, and I'll harvest whatever is ready at any point in time. And I'm amazed at, I've got lettuce plants that are over 6 foot tall, 6'7" almost, that are bolting at that height and still standing in a rainy season. I just find that the more you leave things alone and just make sure that the soils can function, the plants just begin to behave in ways that you've never seen before. But no, I don't purposefully plant things together. I let them do their thing. I plant them where the gaps are, and yeah.
I think her question was about plants, nature plants, and do you use them as signatories of something or other? But your answer was beautiful.
I don't understand that question then.
Like, is this plant a symptom of that imbalance, or that plant a symptom of this dynamic? The weeds.
Okay. I actually, when I'm teaching, I say that when you look at the different plant groups that are coming up as weeds, theoretically as weeds, they give an indication of what you can grow there as you move your soils forward, because that particular type of plant is ready for that kind of soil already, and there might be the mycorrhizal or the other communities that know that type of plant. So for example, when I see Sodom apple, which is of the Solanaceae family, growing in a wild space, and some of those wild lettuce varieties, and people are saying, I want to start growing X, and it's a completely different family group, I always say, well, could you market something that's along this family group to begin with as you move in transition, because you're going to likely be a little bit more successful than going for something that that's not there in the natural stuff that's coming through, that's not related to any of that. But I don't, yeah, so that might help.
That's a brilliant suggestion, which would have to do with basically the functioning microbiome, right?
Yeah.
If the microbiome of this family of plants is present, then, take the weed version and the crop version, quote unquote, and then you're going to be better. That makes complete logical sense for people who like to, understand the why. But that makes total sense. Tom says, I'm eager to submit Brix readings for my farm. I already have a refractometer and press. I just need a way to connect with your program. That's the energy we're looking for. If you've already got a refractometer and press, then you've already joined the organization, because you have to join to get that. So you would be in the short list of people we would be sending this communication out to, Tom. Yeah, this is an event which is live and available for people who are registered at this conference. The recording will go out sometime in the future. We have not publicly launched this yet. You can't see it on the website. So I'm not sure, the word isn't fight. The word is coordinate with everybody about when it's ready, when it's good enough, what's useful for people. I think I want to say before the end of the year. I'm not sure how much sooner before the end of the year. I can ask. I mean, Rose and Dan and Greg, do you guys have any thoughts about, when you think, based on, the list of projects we identified, the software version the beta version will be available for members to use?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few. You might have seen it when I was going through my demo. There's a bug or two that are really critical that we want to make sure that we address before we open it up and let lots of people start to provide data. I think the other key thing is we want to make sure we have a clear written out process. So with some questions that we want people to think about as they're going through, and like, you are helping to design this software at the same time. So make sure that we have a good process for you to provide feedback back to us, and we have those questions really written out in a way that can help the process move forward. So I don't have a specific timeline for how long it'll take to address those last bugs, but those are the two, I think, things that we need to wrap up before we can do kind of a pseudo launch for a set of beta testers.
Rose, as the person doing the work, do you have any kind of numbers on time?
It will have to shake out in the fights or conversations.
I'm like, let's release it now. Like, no, it's not ready. Let's do it now. No, we gotta wait.
We'll have to see who's louder.
No, I generally listen to whatever you guys tell me to do. I just want to make it happen faster. So it's not exactly a fight.
It's very exciting. It's always the developers slowing everyone down. Oh, let me get my numbers. But we want to really make sure it's a robust process so that we can trust the data good enough to be able to enact policy changes and everything.
Perfect. Sue?
I just want to say, I totally get it, Rose, and stick to your guns and tell people to back off. I know exactly what it's like. My tech team are incredible, absolutely incredible. And I'll never forget when we were launching the soil lab, where you put your sample in and it pings out results into your hand. We did it with a live audience. We actually did it the day that the students were getting their awards. And the one guy who'd done a lot of the build, he came into the office. The launch was at like 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock, I didn't even have a working prototype. I had people coming in and sitting down, and I was like, you guys kept saying, it's going to be ready, it's going to be ready. And I'm like, well, what's my B plan? Because people are here and I have not seen a working prototype. And I saw it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. This guy goes in, he goes into the office at the back, he puts his head on the desk and he falls fast asleep. The launch happened and I was like, And now what's supposed to happen? 5, 4, 3. I said the messages are going to ping on this because we did it live on the screen, and everything went so smoothly. He was like, he'd been up like until that time, was fast asleep in the back, wasn't even there for that moment of glory. Everybody was standing up and clapping their hands and cheering. And I was just like, wow. I'd never seen a working prototype until the actual launch. It was mad. So
Yeah. Brilliant.
don't slave drive, Dan.
I don't slave drive. I'm too distracted.
No.
I'm too distracted to slave drive. I got too many things going on. It's more about keeping the cash flowing, I think, is really the issue. Is just like making sure that there's, there's money is on hand to pay to get the work done, and coordinating the priorities. So yeah, but I don't know. I guess I would say not multiple months. It may be more than a few weeks, but in that time, I would like that before Christmas. I think that'd be exciting. But we'll see soon. PS asks how to be a paid member. Sarah put the link in there, bionutrient.org/member. Right now that is there's a one price for membership, and that's $55 a year, which is not a lot in some parts of the world and is a lot in other parts of the world. So if we want to talk about having a membership,
Sue's writing that email already. Dear Dan.
let's figure out the number, and then let's find a sponsor, Sue, and then we can figure out how many you want. Yeah, let's do it. 100%. We can. We've done this before. We can do it again.
Dan can also say if people get really excited and they go to the store as a member, there is a Brix kit in there right now. That is not the game. That is that's a different item. It's still a Brix kit, but it's not the Brixit kit.
And it's much more expensive. And part of it is that it has this is not a garlic press. This
Exactly.
is a really nice way to get a drop of juice out of anything. But I think it costs us $60 or $70. So it's like it's handmade, it's a vice grip, which you probably could procure fairly inexpensively in Kenya. But then there's these two key pieces of metal that are bent, cut and welded on, which I'm sure lots of people could do this. But for getting drops of juice out of certain kinds of leaves, the garlic press is not going to cut it. So the current kit that's on there is that. There's no mention of this game and app on the website yet. All that's up there right now is just the old stuff. Yeah.
And also that's the reason I saw it in one of the Q&A. That's the reason for the coin. Did you want to address that, Dan? Why we use that coin?
Yeah, well, so when I've got my nice little kit here, and I don't think you went through properly and showed like close enough on the camera, all the branding and the explanations and it really looks like a real thing, right?
Are you asking me to show off? Because I'll totally do it.
Yeah, I think you should show it off. It's like it's got all kinds of, it's like it looks like it's something you buy, this is really.
I've done branding for almost 30 years. I hope it looks pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, but and the coin, you should I don't know.
Well, that's the point, is the coin.
It's actually a Bionutrient coin.
Yes.
And the coin goes inside of, oh, go ahead, Dan. You
Well, no, yeah, it goes inside the garlic press, because if you take a piece of peach and you put it in here, you try to press it, you're gonna get a lot of pulp. And what you want is just the juice. So we made a coin. Adam designed, worked with people in China, coordinated this all kinds of work to get a coin that fits right in there. And so you stick the coin in, and then you press it, and just juice comes out and no pulp. So
genius. There you go. There's my modesty for the show.
Yeah, that's the purpose of the coin. Whoever you are, 538-575.
It's not a Bitcoin, no. That's
no, it's not.
It's a Brix coin. It's a Brix coin.
Yeah. If you could print them at the price they cost to print and get a Bitcoin's worth out of them, that would be
well. The other thing that we wanted to do is you wanted to have it's almost like a memory of this moment. When you actually hold the coin, it's really special. It's a really lovely feeling to have
It's like
You
we're
know,
printing something. It's like more than paper. It's kind of like money. It's like
Yeah.
the size of a quarter. Yeah.
yeah, I love it.
Maite says, Sue, have you compared Brix values from the veggies grown in farms in which you have also measured microbial density, microbiology density?
Only on my own. I've only done Brix reading on my own and done the soil sampling on my own. So the actual doing the soil analysis using the microscope, I thought it would be something that I was going to get really excited about, and I thought that I would start my own lab doing that. And then I found that it just takes so much time, and I found that I was really, really interested in looking at everything else. So I started studying water, every drop of water in all the different systems that we had around, in the pond, in the bird bath, and everywhere, and looking at that life, and then learning about those and diatoms. And I found that actually doing soil sampling, I was not passionate about it. So I do it really infrequently, and I actually could not be paid to do soil sampling analysis using a microscope. I couldn't. It doesn't excite me enough. But I did in the beginning.
Yeah.
But now I know that if Brix is a measure of soil health, and soil health is a measure of soil microbial density as well as nutrient density, then to some degree, the microscope almost feels like it's become kind of like redundant in where I want to go with this work, apart from looking at everything. And I do look at everything. I have a Brix refractometer on my kitchen table most of the time, because when I'm eating something and it's really great for my garden, I'm like, oh my god, I got to check the Brix on this. It's crazy.
It's so much fun. And when you have other people over, like I said, if you actually do the process in front of other people of taking the tomato out of the salad, or the lettuce out of the salad, or the blueberry out of the dessert, or whatever it is, like it's any fun. So we've got 4 minutes left here. We're out of questions from the audience. We've got many people. I welcome last thoughts, comments, parting words from any or all of you. Don't all jump at once.
There's someone blowing outside. So
Leaf blowing outside.
I just want to say thank you to the ourSide team for it always, you guys always blow me away with the stuff that you're doing, and I'm really enjoying just this, everybody coming together for this, everyone's bringing their A game, and it's really, really exciting. And thank you for Dan for and keep finding money for us if you could. We'll appreciate it.
Keeping the lights on.
Yeah. It's
like Greg said.
This really matters. This is really, really important.
Yeah.
I've worked in healthcare before, and that just drains you to pieces. This is actually a topic I could not be more passionate about. I love it. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for all of your love.
I just well, I was just going to say, I'm just very excited and appreciative of everybody who's going to actually use this, as like someone who does technology development. It's inevitable that a lot of what you do never really gets used, right? There's a lot of big ideas. And as you do it for longer, you just more and more appreciate the things that actually move. And I think this is cool. I think there's people who are engaged, and it's exactly the reason that we started ourSci in the first place, is to support these kind of communities. So just really excited to see it move forward, see some data, and see how people talk about it and think about it. So appreciate that.
Nice.
Yeah. I want to jump in and say thank you to all of you for all the work that you're doing, because it's a big piece for us coming in and being able to fit in and learn from and understand and collaborate with. And thank you, Dan, for being so welcoming to us, to my community, to the iCal community. We're really looking forward to meeting you in person in the next couple of weeks, and taking you around the country, and spending time with you, and just having you see this side of the world. We'll take you to go and see some mamamboga so that you really get what we're talking about.
I've been to them in Central America and South Asia, and I think I know what it's like. But yes, 100%. Yeah.
So thank you, and thank you also to all of the iCal community who are so ardent in getting soils right, and who, you know, in the beginning when I started, I felt like the funnel is so important, of getting the right people into the funnel, and all you have to say is come and learn about soils, and most people will be like, that is so boring. And then you get these curious geeks who are like, soils, I can do this. And they're the ones, and I hugely appreciate it. So thanks to all of you guys. Big love.
Yeah, brilliant. Dan and Rose, parting comments?
I'm looking forward to seeing y'all's data. Thank you. Please submit and let us see what you got. Show us what you got.
Yeah, no, I thought Sue's ending was so good there. I didn't want to end it, but since you called me out, I'm just excited. And Greg mentioned this. Like, we always want to build technology tools to support communities that want to take control of their own future and take control of their own research and learnings. And so the BFA community, and I hope we interact with you, Sue, more with iCow. It sounds like you have an amazing community. So really just happy to be a part of this and to have been a part of the BFA journey for, like, I think it's been 8 years now, and it's been amazing. So appreciate the invitation to be here.
Brilliant. Well, thank you all much. I have so much appreciation for all of you, and look forward to this coming to pass. Brilliant.